Hello, everyone. Welcome to the What at Work podcast show with your host, Julian Leahy. And today I'm joined by the very interesting Collin Jewett from Fort Collins, Colorado. Welcome to the show, Collin.
Hey, Julian, thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming on. And, people have a really big fear that it's not going to work out and they're going to experience failure. And that seems like a rational thing to have, to be avoiding failure. Tell us your take on it, Collin.
Yeah, well, it's a totally rational fear to have. The bad news is that you're gonna fail. So let me be. I'm sure someone's hopefully told you that, depending on where you are in your professional journey, especially if you're pursuing entrepreneurial ventures. But failure is going to happen, and I think I think the issue with failure is not that it's going to happen. I think the issue with failure is when people don't know how to use it and make use of it and understand what the purpose and value of failure is. So yeah, I mean, I'd love to have a discussion on that. I'd love to hear kind of your feedback, your thoughts, and maybe get some back and forth.
What is the purpose of it? Why is it necessary, and how can it be good?
Yeah, well, at least so to give us some people with some background here. So I'm a learning coach. That's my primary trade, and one of the things that I've recognized working, I typically work with professionals, not students, which kind of surprises people a lot of times. So it's typically mid-career professionals. And something that I find really consistently is that there's a broken definition of success that they're operating on. And a lot of times it's not something that they've consciously articulated. It's something that's kind of living under the surface. But if you don't fix it, if you don't recognize it and adjust it, then what's going to happen is you're going to avoid taking action really consistently. So if you're listening to this and you find you're the kind of person, you have maybe you've got a lot of good ideas, you have big dreams, and you just don't consistently take action on them and you can't figure out why, this might be you. So I'm going to give two definitions of success. And Julian, if you're willing to, tell me which one you subscribe to, or neither or both or whatever is fine. But one of the definitions of success that I hear a lot is success is when you've achieved the goal. So that's one. The second definition that I hear a lot is success is moving towards the goal. Those are the two that I hear most frequently or see in people's behaviors. Which of those two do you feel like you subscribe to, or is it neither or both?
Well, I don't know. Probably a little bit different. I feel like because what happens is when you set the goal, you don't actually know what you're doing, and you don't know the adjustments that you're going to make. So for me, the goal becomes a little bit like it changes as you go along all the time, and so I feel like as long as I feel that what I'm doing is working and I'm going in the right direction, I guess progressing towards some sort of goal, as long as I'm progressing and I feel like I'm on the right track, then I feel that's success, and I'm always kind of striving for something. But I've never been a big one on setting concrete goals. For me, it's all about feeling a bit of a thrill in what you're doing, and
Mhm.
and it's a constant like tweaking process, like you're navigating through, and you're doing all the stuff that's not working, and you're refining the process. And then once I've refined it a little bit, then I'll go, okay, now I kind of know my direction, and I'm going to set a goal of doing whatever. Like for me currently, it's 100 podcasts. And it's just like once I get there, it'll be like, well, what do you do? What's this going to be no parade? It's like, well, it's just for the sake of it. Um, but I will feel pretty happy because I feel like I'm going in the right direction, I suppose. Sorry. What do you
No,
think
that's
of
that that's awesome. I think that there's probably a lot of wisdom in what you just said that people might not catch if they're not paying really close attention. So I want to unpack some of the things you said there because I think you're totally on the
now you're
track.
interviewing me?
What's that?
Now you're interviewing me.
Yeah, I mean, I
Yeah,
love the back and forth. I like the
yeah, it's all
conversation.
good.
It's fun. Um, yeah, so I want to unpack a few things there. So one of the major problems with both of the definitions that I gave, so So if they sounded good to you as a listener, if you're listening and you're like, okay, goal achieved or moving towards the goal, both those sound like good things. And I think in a lot of ways they are, but when you actually try to apply them, most people apply them in a super counterproductive way. So I want to talk through that real quick. So there's two types of errors. There's errors of commission. Those are active errors when you do something wrong. So you take an action and the action takes you in a direction that you don't want to go. Or you could also think of it as it moves you in a way away from the goal, or it moves you towards the goal, but not in a straight line, something like that. So it's not the perfect action. And then there's errors of omission. Errors of omission is when you don't do something when you could have done something right. So it's an error that is caused by abstaining from taking action. So those are the two types. So if you give yourself the definition of success, that success is achieving the goal or success is moving towards the goal, what's going to happen, and this is happening on a subconscious deep level, but you can probably identify it if you're in this place, is that you're going to start prioritizing making errors of omission over making errors of commission. And here's why. It's because if you don't move, then you haven't moved away from the goal. You haven't gone the wrong direction. So you're actually better off by staying exactly where you are than moving backwards or risking moving backwards. So if you're not confident that you can move forwards or directly towards the goal, you're going to avoid moving altogether. So what's going to happen is if you're not confident, which you're not going to be confident if you're just starting a venture or you're new to entrepreneurship or new to a field, you're not going to be confident. You're not going to be that competent probably because you're at that beginning stage of learning. And so if you have those definitions of success, you're going to avoid taking action over taking wrong actions. And that's the exact opposite of what you want to be doing. And this is, I think, what I want to unpack from what you said, which is perfect, is that the point of goals is to orient you in space. It's to help you to see what direction you're moving. So you have got a reference point. But the point of a goal is not just to achieve the goal, because achieving the goal is just about getting something. And I think when people really introspect, they'll realize that what they want is not, I mean, some people maybe, but what you want is not really to get something. It's usually to become something. And the goal is just a concrete way that you can orient yourself in space. You can say, am I becoming the kind of person that I want to be? And so what happens is with failure is all about prioritizing, making errors of commission, active mistakes, because that's how you can actually see what direction you're moving and then reflect on it and then make a change. And that's what you were saying about kind of tweaking along the way, deciding, am I going the right direction? And I love that you talked about, whether it's interesting, or I think you used the word thrill for you. Is this an exciting direction that I want to be moving or not? And if you're not moving at all, if you're being stationary, you can't make course corrections. You can't reflect on what's worked well, what's not working so well. You're definitely not going to feel a sense of excitement. You're just going to feel stagnant. Does that resonate with you?
Yeah, definitely. And one of the biggest things that I think is a bad direction is when people give themselves an income goal, and for me, it is just not about that at all. It's about finding something that is working and what you're enjoying, and then if you're going just for money, you're not really working on what you're doing. And it's better to just have the money as a kind of side effect and not the main thing that you're going for. And if you could just, for me, the goal of life is to be happy and enjoy what you're doing, and everything else is a byproduct. But I think that's a big one that a lot of people will tell me is that they want to do, whatever, 50 grand a month or whatever, and it's like, well, how about we just work on doing something that's good and something that you really enjoy, even if you weren't getting paid for it, or you probably wouldn't do it, but something that is intrinsically fun. Because the other thing is that if you're going for, say, that income as your goal, then you're going to burn out because you're not really focusing on something that's worthwhile. So creating content, for example, you've got to find a way of doing it that is fun, and it's not too much work, it's engaging, and it's allowing you to talk to people and all of that stuff, because consistency is the key. And if you set about some sort of goal that is just going to absolutely burn you out, then you're not going to have that consistency there. So that's another one in terms of, it's all about just doing something that gives you enjoyable, time. It creates something useful for you, and you're having lots of conversations with people. That's content creation. I mean, that's what that's all about, because I always feel like you've got to have a really good way of producing lots of content. And if you can do it in a way that's not a chore, then you're really onto something and for you. So here we are interviewing people, and that's exactly what I'm doing, creating content that is fun and easy to do and consistent.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, that's something I realized too. I was hosting a podcast for a while, and I really enjoyed doing it. But I stopped after one season because I realized that, I kind of done what I wanted to do with it. And I thought continuing to go with it would just be kind of forcing it. And I realized, am I going to be effective doing something that makes me miserable? Usually not. You can do that for short term. You can grind through things for a specific purpose, but if it's just kind of ongoing, there's no light at the end of the tunnel, doing something that you don't enjoy anymore, usually I don't think that really goes very well for people. It's going to cost you a lot more than it's worth. But I want to make sure that what we're talking about today is really practical for people, because I think it's really easy to say things like, hey, failure is good, and it's like, okay, well, it doesn't feel very good. I don't know how to implement it or make use of it. So I wanted to give people some very concrete tips, things you can do today to start implementing a more successful definition of success. So first of all, I gave two definitions before. I gave the success is goal achieved and success is moving towards the goal. I haven't really articulated the alternative, so I wanted to offer at least one version. This is my version that I use for my own self-evaluation and course correction, so to speak. So I define success as reflection and angular change, conscious angular change. And what I mean by that is, if you see a goal as like a physical point in space, just for the purposes of representation, you think of the goal as physical point in space, point B, and you're at point A. The purpose of the goal is to help to orient you so you can tell what direction you're going, how fast you're going in that direction. That's why it's there. So I think setting goals is really important, but you just need to have them in the right context to understand what they are. So we set this goal. And then angular change. So think about it this way. Like if I set a goal of, I want to make $1 million, which that's not a goal of mine. Whatever. I don't think it's a great goal, but it's a goal that a lot of people will set early on in their careers. So you say, I want to make $1 million. Well, something that's really interesting about that type of goal is that you can reach that goal of getting something without ever changing as a person. Like hypothetically, for example, you could be working a dead-end job that you hate, and you'd be making constant progress towards that goal of making $1 million. You wouldn't be changing as a person, you wouldn't be improving, and yet you're still making progress. And you might even achieve it at some point. You could also just stumble across a briefcase with $1 million in it on the street, and then would you say, well, my goal is achieved? Like, personally, to me, I would say no. It's like, like, what did that do for you? You just found something on the street. Like, that's, to me, that's not really a sign of progress. That was a random chance event. So when I talk about reflection and angular change, what that requires, if that's my definition of success, that requires me to prioritize making errors of commission over making errors of omission. Because if I'm not moving, I have nothing to reflect on. And so it pushes me to move. I want to at least start moving in a direction. And that direction might be like, if my goal is over here and I move the exact opposite direction, that is okay. It's okay as long as I reflect on what just happened, and then I make an angular change. And an angular change is a change you cannot make. Well, if you're making it consciously, it forces you to change as a person. It's changing your orientation, it's changing your direction. It's not just gliding along with inertia without thinking about it. It's actually saying, okay, here's where I went, here's the direction I went, the speed I went that direction. I'm not very happy with I don't want to keep going that way. I'm glad I made that mistake so I could look back on it, but I'd actually like to do something differently, and that's requiring me to make a change. And if you're doing that all the time, first of all, if you define that as success, you'll be like, I'm actually successful in this. I'm changing as a person. I'm growing. My path is getting better. I'm enjoying what I'm doing more. And that success, you can look on those mistakes as useful to you. They're actually informing your decision making, and you're going to be improving every single day. And so what that looks like on a really practical level is, and I do this on a weekly basis. You can do it on a daily basis. It doesn't matter. I think the less you're familiar you are with this, the more frequently you should do it at the beginning. But that, I think one great way to start is by each morning or each evening, just reflecting on the day before or a couple days before and saying, what are some things that worked well? Actually write them down. What are some things that didn't work so well? And what's at least one thing that I'm going to change today? One thing I'm going to do differently. And that's going to it's going to force you to actually reflect on what you're doing. It's going to force you to make decisions, which is key, make mistakes, and it's going to force you to improve. And you're going to be a completely different person than in a couple months, definitely in a year or so, than you were when you started. And I think that is a much more effective way to go. It's going to keep you moving rather than keeping you stagnant.
And how do you make the discipline happen that you're asking yourself this every day?
Yeah, like I said, for me, I did it every day for a while. I think it's really important to do it frequently at the very beginning. But now I do it on a weekly basis, and I think that works really well. But yeah, I mean, part of that, I think the idea of discipline, I think it's often misunderstood, because the truth is, if there's something you really, really hate doing, more discipline might not be the answer. You know, you might want to reflect on why are you doing it in the first place, because maybe the fact that you hate doing it is an indicator that it's not worth doing.
Yeah,
there are some things that you might hate doing that are worth doing, and you can reflect on that and make that decision. But if it's like, I'm going to hate doing this forever, then it's probably it's probably not worth your time. So I think it's a really important like indicator for introspection. If it's like, I hate doing this, maybe you're doing the wrong thing. Maybe you're on the wrong path, but that should be like a warning flag for you.
Definitely. And that's that thing of like, you're going to burn out if you're forcing yourself to do something that you hate doing. Like sometimes if I talk to salespeople and they're trying to do all this cold calling and stuff, and I'm thinking, well, you know what, this sucks. You're telling me it sucks. How about you come up with a way of doing something which is going to bring people to you that you enjoy doing, and you're going to be able to keep doing it, and you're going to enjoy what you're doing, and it's going to give you that consistency. You've got to find a way to be consistent long term. For me, that's the key. And I run away from stuff I hate doing, and I'm always looking for shortcuts, really, and better ways of doing things that remove that feeling of burnout, but allow you to keep feeling like you're progressing and going in the right direction. So don't forget the discipline. The other thing, I mean, as far as work, have your own motivation for work, and if you feel tired, then have time off and all that stuff. And you don't need to make yourself a slave at the grindstone. And it's better to be more productive and feeling good rather than just absolutely killing yourself. That's what I reckon.
Yeah, and I honestly think people should be looking for opportunities to fail in meaningful ways, because failure is feedback. And if you don't like what you're doing right now, what you probably need to do is find opportunities to fail, so then you can be informed about what you don't like and what's not working well. And if you're not paying attention to that kind of thing, you can continue to do something successfully that makes you miserable. So that's not good. Or you can continue to fail in ways that are not meaningful to you. So I think paying attention to failure is really key. It's did I fail because I lacked some sort of knowledge or competence? In which case, well, that's great feedback for me. That's informing me on how I can change or what I can do differently. Or did I fail because this is not something that's worth pursuing and I'm just wasting my time? And I know so like I said, I'm a learning coach, and so when I'm working with people, I'm trying to get them to start to see failure. It's like it's the opportunity you're looking for. What are ways that you can fail as fast as possible in a way that's going to give you feedback that's going to help you move in a more positive direction? So if you're not failing at all and you're not happy, those two things go together often. You're not failing at all, you're not happy. Well, you're not getting any feedback that's going to help you to move in a positive direction. So
awesome.
What's that?
Collin, what are people going to find if they go to the Superhuman Academy?
Yeah, so Superhuman Academy, I'm a coach with them and the director of the coaching program there. And what we do at Superhuman Academy is we just try to help people to maximize their potential, which I know is a kind of nebulous blanket term, but the main thing we focus on is how do you partner more effectively with your brain. So we talk about how the brain works, how your brain works, how to understand your brain better, and how to make use of it. So how to unleash creativity, how to maximize your memory. You have an incredibly powerful memory capacity, and most people think they have a bad memory. It's just because they don't know how to use it correctly. We talk about that, and how to bring the joy back into learning. Because if learning is something that you dread doing, you're not going to improve as a person because that's what learning is. So I think a lot of people have learning trauma from school, things like that, and they see learning as this miserable thing where you sit in a classroom and someone lectures at you. If that's your perspective of learning, that's very limiting belief. It's not productive for you. So we try to bring the joy back. Like how can you make learning something that is absolutely life-giving and brings joy to you? So that's what we're all about at Superhuman Academy. We've got several courses on that. We've got coaching, like I said, and I also run a course on maven.com, which is called Discover Your Inner Super Learner, which is all about that, partnering with your brain and rediscovering the joy of learning.
Sounds good. Sounds like something worth checking out. If you are a little bit lost in what you're doing, feeling frustrated, have a chat with Collin, because it's good. I like these concepts, and I believe it and myself. So thanks for coming on, Collin. Some great value there.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This has been fun.
Everyone else, thanks for watching and listening. We got Jeopardy coming up on Wednesday night or Thursday morning for Australians, where previous guests play Jeopardy just for fun, and we're going to live stream it. So you got that to look forward to. Thanks for coming on, Collin, and thanks for listening and watching, everyone. I'll see you very soon on another episode.